a Jew could be a Jew feeding on non-Jewish sources?
Absolutely. Oh yeah, I don't. That's what I'm saying. I think a free Jew who sees his Judaism in terms of belonging to a Jewish family, an ethnic belonging, and is free, is open to learning from all cultures, to thriving and striving to use all cultures to humanize the world. I just wouldn't I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. I think we need frameworks. Human beings generally need frameworks to live. They need kelim, they need equipment, they need language, etc. That's my beginning language. But again, like one very important humanist once said, someone who only knows one language and only one culture, he can't be a humanist. To be a humanist means to know at least well, two languages and two cultures. Because that's part of being human. I mean, okay, and I would like to see Jews, if possible, know 3 languages, 4 cultures. And I don't think the question of the ethnic seal is what counts. I think an idea is either an idea, a value, a way of living that's worth pursuing, should be worth pursuing because it's aesthetically correct, because it's ethically helpful, etc. And I don't really care where it originates. If it works out that Judaism also has the same thing to say as this, that's fine. If Judaism has something else to say and it's better than the other thing, fine. The criteria, and that's why in that sense I am a product of the Enlightenment, or if you like, ultimately I think that's our greatest privilege and problem. We're free to choose, and I think that to me is the most precious thing, is that freedom to choose and to create our own path. Now usually if we're human, we realize we don't live on islands, we live on, we live on continents. I don't just choose myself, I choose with other human beings, my fellow human beings. But again, the kashrut label, is this Jewish or not Jewish? All that obsession, oh, is that a Jewish idea or not a Jewish idea? Can I say this or not say this? And is this really authentic? Is here in Israel, it's like in Revivim once, the program for training young Jewish people to be teachers in secular schools, in non-religious schools. I once said, you guys can write anything you want. So some person came and said, tell me, can I write about contemporary Jewish culture in Israel and as a question of defining the realms of Jewish culture? So someone said, can I write something on the erotic poetry of a very well-known poetess? Because that's not Jewish, is it? And I said, well, as far as I'm concerned, yeah, it is Jewish. There are no criteria in that sense, except there is a criteria, the ethnic. The ethnic. Does the person writing feel in some way he's writing from the perspective of the Jewish family to the Jewish family and to the world? That's the only thing.
Maybe, do you need Jews to be in any way different from others?
That's a silly question, in my opinion. No offense intended.
It might very well be, but let me explain a moment. Let us say that there would be no differences at all. Then maybe Jews would not be around.
That's correct.
So within that sense,
but that's
okay, and the tension between no difference and difference.
I think, if I may say, I think I learned this expression from you, but you have every right to deny it because, maybe I misunderstood you. Well, there's something I often say. The only thing I think that is universal and totally true about all human beings is that they are particular beings. They are historically conditioned. You're not born, no one's born into Esperanto or into world communism or to any of the universal, all-embracing. Human beings are born always into families with histories, memories, language, etc. Now what they do with, that's given as far as, so the answer.
That's the difference.
That's a difference. And that's a given. And the problem is, to me, the big moral, ethical, as I said to you, is not to make your differences a way of keeping people out, but of allowing yourself to converse with the world and even allowing people in. So that has also ramifications of who would be accepted by me as a Jewish people. It'd be a far cry from the halachic definition. With any Jew that would say, any human being would say, I want to be part of your people, part of your family. I'd say, faddal. I mean, I'd probably warn him the trouble this person's going to get into, but I would say, hey, you want to come and join.
Which is partially the halachic tradition as well.
To a certain extent, except, no, I'm not saying
no warning.
A warning, that's right. That's part of the halachic tradition. Yes, that's correct. That's correct.
Yeah. The halachic orthodox, should we say?
Well, I don't know. You see, that's another thing. If you're asking that, I'll just try to say briefly. I have, as a free Jew, I have respect for all trends. I really do, of all Judaism. But I think that but I have respect also for halakha. And halakha interests me, but I have no a priori commitment to it. Now, all of your Jewish religious movements, in that sense, are halachic, including your most radical left, if you like, religious movements, because reform movements also are not willing to say, I'm going to do this thing, or I'm going to act this way because it's the right way to act, because it's aesthetically correct, because that's what my humanity tells me. And he's not going to look over his shoulder and say, well, now, wait a second. Can I anchor this point that I so firmly believe in the Jewish tradition? Is it contradictory to? And a free Jew says, I don't care. No, really, I don't care. I mean, I care, but I don't care. If it's not a Jewish tradition, so what? I mean, the Jewish tradition has all the answers. What, am I, an idiot? No thinking, reflective person, in my opinion, open-minded person, can think that in my opinion, that any tradition, no matter how good it is, and how long, the age of wisdom, etc., and how it doesn't matter that it has all the answers.
Since we're here at Melton and in Jerusalem and in the state of Israel, maybe you could say something about Judaism in Israel, your Judaism in Israel. If it's in any way different from what you just mentioned, of course.
I would say that there is one crucial difference about what I have to say about Judaism in general and Judaism in Israel, and that, and this maybe relates to, I'm trying to think how I can say this telegraphically, which is not exactly one of my strong hands in general to be telegraphic. So let me try to think about it. Telegraphic, I would say as follows. Here, unfortunately, when it comes to political, economic, social questions, one cannot afford the Talmudic approach of Elu ve'elu 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 divrei Elohim chayim. These words and these words and these words and these words are words of the living God. One can afford that intellectually, but unfortunately we have to decide, do we want to build here a social democracy? Do we want to try to make peace with the Palestinians? Do we want to... All these questions are not just mere questions, theoretical questions. That is, in my opinion, one of the reasons I remain committed to the State of Israel and its project, because it's a project which makes Judaism and Jewish culture into a culture that can do very bad, because it's empowered. And I think that in that sense, I'm in the modernist, I don't know what to call it, but the notion that responsibility includes the power to do wrong, and not only right, is very, very crucial to me. It's a very important feature. In other words, it's not, as Brenner said jokingly, this is not my formulation, the notion that Jews are extremely moral, ethical people is when they're in a minority situation where they don't have the real power, the real physical, political, military power to do evil. It's somewhat like the eunuch, the castrated person who says, I don't commit adultery. That's not my formulation. I'm saying it very charif, but I think it's very strong. In other words, it's also what the soccer team coach says about, who are my best players? Oh, the ones who sit on the bench. They never screw up. Now, I am the last person in the world that wants Jews to screw up, and I think if that's a test for us being human, we are doing very well. Because as far as I'm concerned, we are screwing up beautifully now that we have power here in the state of Israel. However, if you ask me, do I prefer being in a situation where I can always be that critical minority who's always going like this to the majority and say, ha 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 ha, and bawling them out, and even maybe be willing, most radically dramatic situation, to actually sacrifice their lives for the sake of justice. What's called in some literature the righteousness, the might of righteousness, the might of right. That we Jews, we should stand for the might of right. We're always right. And that's our only true power, ethical power. Personally, between that and between the choice of that and being exposed to a lot of human beings who aren't so nice, and their evils and their lack of consciousness when it comes to killing others, including Jews, I prefer to be in this awful situation of having responsibility and of doing evil by using, because I have power to use, then not to have power and to sacrifice, to be the sacrificial lamb of good humanity. So,
those are the only two options, because maybe an option would be for Jews to try to change other countries so as minorities to have empowerment as well. Right?
I favor that totally, and I don't think that my model of Jewishness means you have to live in Israel. But I'll tell you what it does. It means that Jews have to develop, wherever they are, an ethos which does seek and is culturally critical of all hegemonies, all systems that truly are not fair-minded and don't give other human beings who belong to groups that are more oppressed full equality. And Jews have to be the forefront of that all over, worldwide. So, for example, I don't know enough about it, but Tikkun magazine, not the magazine, but the people behind it, or Arthur Waskow was a bit way out. I hope this is not quoted. You know, he's a bit, but who really takes Judaism and tries to make it into a full-fledged culture that struggles against oppression of all sorts of. I think that's my Judaism anywhere, okay. But I do think there is an issue. I think it's very problematic. I think it's somewhat utopian. All historical record is that all the attempts to create in multicultural states where the agreement was that the minorities would be respected, they would have a right to their cultures, etc., etc. At least maybe it's changing now, but at least in the interwar period, it proved totally vacuous. In other words, the Poles did not allow their ethnic minorities to really function and flourish, not only Jews in general. And I think it takes a tremendous amount of good human will to allow freedom without power.
So it would be true to say that for you it's better to be evil and empowered than nice and disempowered.
Yeah, that's definitely my stand. That's correct. That's a very not nasty. That's a very basic way, maybe base way of saying it. Yes, that's correct. Because I certainly would not say I want us to be evil. I'm saying, but if the choice is between being powerless and therefore
given the choice.
Yes, yes.
Okay, Mark. I think that we've done enough for the first time.
My pleasure.
All what we have now left is to expect people to do like